me ask you something. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself? No noise, no distractions, no phone buzzing with someone else's business. Just you. Because here's the truth. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to the world instead of building one. They let opinions, gossip, social media, and comparisons dictate how they feel and what they do. And in all that noise, they forget the one person they're actually responsible for, themselves. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because silence is uncomfortable. It forces you to listen to your own thoughts. It demands you face the truth about where you are and what you're doing. But in that silence, something powerful happens. You begin to hear your own voice. You begin to distinguish it from the opinions, expectations, and noise of the world. And in that clarity, you rediscover your why. Why you wake up, why you keep going, why you See, the loudest people are rarely the strongest. Strength isn't in shouting, it's in being so aligned with who you are that you don't need to prove it to anyone. Let me share a story. There was a young man who wanted to make something of himself. Every day he watched others, friends posting their wins, strangers showing off their success. He tried to keep up, tried to match their noise. But the more he spoke, the less progress he made, until one day he stopped. He stopped watching, he stopped comparing, he stopped explaining. He went silent. And in that silence, he focused not on what everyone else was doing, but on what he could control, himself. He worked quietly. He improved himself daily. And months later, he didn't need to announce anything. His growth spoke for him. His work introduced him before he even entered the room. In a world that never stops talking, silence is one of the most underrated tools we have. We live in constant noise. Notifications, opinions, news, comments, chatter. Everywhere we turn, someone is trying to tell us something, sell us something, or influence how we think. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin to lose touch with ourselves. We mistake other people's voices for our own. We adopt beliefs, goals, and priorities that were never really ours. The mind becomes cluttered, and in that clutter, we begin to feel lost. That's where silence becomes powerful. Silence creates clarity. Not the kind of silence that comes from ignoring life or running away from problems, but the intentional kind, the kind that gives your thoughts space to breathe. When you stop speaking for a while, and even more importantly, when you stop reacting, something profound happens. You begin to observe. You begin to hear. And for the first time in a long time, you can tell the difference between what matters and what doesn't. When you're always surrounded by noise, every little thing feels urgent. Every opinion feels like it needs a response. Every distraction feels like something you can't afford to ignore. But silence resets your perspective. It reminds you that not everything deserves your attention. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every invitation to argue is worth accepting. In silence, you start to see where your energy is going, and often it's going to the wrong places. You realize you've been wasting time trying to explain yourself to people who aren't listening, trying to impress people who don't matter, and trying to be understood in places where you're simply not meant to belong. When you're quiet, you learn to let go of all of that. You begin to conserve your energy for things that actually move you forward. Clarity doesn't come from trying to figure everything out all at once. It comes from removing what doesn't belong. Silence allows that process to begin. It strips away the noise, the comparison, the anxiety. It leaves you alone with the one person you've probably been ignoring the most, yourself. And when you give yourself that attention, you begin to ask better questions. What do I really want? What am I actually feeling? What have I been avoiding? What truly matters right now? You don't get those answers in chaos, you get them in stillness. And when they come, they're often simple. You realize you don't need more approval, you need more discipline. You don't need louder opinions, you need clearer values. You don't need to do more, you need to focus better. Some people fear silence because it feels like nothing is happening. But that's not true. In silence, everything is happening internally. It's where decisions are made, it's where strength is built, it's where healing begins, and it's where the foundation for real action is formed. So when life gets loud, when the world demands a reaction from you, when you feel overwhelmed by the pressure to speak, post, or prove something, choose silence. Not as a retreat, but as a strategy. Because in that silence, you will find something most people never do: clarity. And clarity is the beginning of real power. There's a subtle but dangerous trap many people fall into, living their lives to be seen rather than to be fulfilled. From the moment we wake up, we're tempted to measure our worth by how others respond to us, how many likes we get, who notices our efforts, who approves of our choices. Slowly, without even realizing it, we start to build a life around validation instead of vision. We start to perform rather than grow. We trade self-respect for applause. But here's the truth. External validation is fleeting. It can disappear as quickly as it comes. And when your confidence is tied to other people's approval, you'll always be one comment, one silence, one rejection away from doubt. That's why focusing on yourself, your goals, your growth, your values is not just important, it's essential. When you shift your attention inward, everything changes. You stop asking, what will they think, and start asking, is this aligned with who I want to become? You stop chasing recognition and start chasing progress. And the beautiful thing about progress is this: it doesn't need an audience. You don't need to be seen to be improving. You don't need to be celebrated to be winning. What matters is the work you put in, not the praise you receive. Self-focus doesn't mean being selfish. It means being intentional. It means building your foundation so solid that outside opinions don't shake you. When you're rooted in who you are and what you're working toward, you become resilient. You develop a quiet confidence that doesn't rely on validation because it's based on results, on discipline, on self-trust. This kind of focus takes courage because, let's face it, approval feels good. It feels good to be liked, to be acknowledged, to be applauded. But those feelings are temporary. They come and go. And if your self-worth depends on them, your stability goes with them. The people who grow the most, the ones who become truly great at what they do, are the ones who learn to put their heads down and work, even when no one's watching. They don't announce every step. They don't wait for permission to move forward. They keep going because their standard is set internally, not externally. Ironically, when you stop trying to be impressive, you often become more impressive, because while others are performing for the crowd, you're mastering your craft. While they're posting highlights, you're building the habits that lead to real transformation. And over time, your results begin to speak louder than their words ever could. When you focus on yourself, you take control of your story. You decide what success means. You choose what's worth your time, your energy, your effort. You're no longer swayed by trends or by what looks good from the outside. You're driven by something deeper: your purpose, your principles, your personal mission. It's a quiet kind of power, and it's the kind that lasts. So ask yourself this: are you building a life that looks good to others, or one that feels right to you? Are you chasing applause or alignment? The more you focus on yourself, the less you'll care about being seen, not because you don't matter, but because you finally realize what does. And that kind of clarity is where true success begins. Talk is easy. Promises are cheap. Anyone can say they want to change, succeed, or become better. Words are everywhere. On social media, in conversations, in journals filled with goals that never see the light of day. But discipline is rare. Discipline is what separates the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the builders, and the wishful thinkers from those who actually make something happen. Discipline is silent. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't post daily updates. It shows up over and over, whether anyone is watching or not. It doesn't need to prove anything, because the results speak for themselves. The most successful people don't spend their time convincing others. They spend it improving themselves. There's something powerful about someone who stays consistent even when the excitement fades. Motivation comes and goes. One day you feel inspired, the next day you feel tired or discouraged. Discipline is what carries you through those days. It's the ability to act according to your values and goals instead of your emotions. And that's where real transformation happens. Everyone wants results, but very few are willing to do the work quietly and consistently over time. We live in a culture of instant gratification where people want fast success and quick rewards. But the truth is, everything meaningful takes time. Building a career, growing as a person, mastering a craft, developing real confidence. And none of that comes without discipline. The people who make the most impact don't spend their time talking about how hard they're working. They just do the work. Day in and day out. They show up when it's boring, when it's uncomfortable, when no one's cheering them on. Because for them, it's not about proving something to others, it's about keeping a promise to themselves. Discipline builds integrity. It means your actions match your intentions. It means you follow through, not because someone's watching, but because you said you would. That kind of integrity builds self-respect. And over time, that self-respect becomes unshakable confidence. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you've done the work. The truth is, most people would rather appear successful than actually do what it takes to be successful. They want the results without the repetition. But anyone who's achieved anything real will tell you, the repetition is the path. There's no shortcut, there's no secret, there's just daily discipline. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It's not about radical overnight change. It's about small, consistent actions. Waking up on time, sticking to your plan, saying no when it's easier to say yes, pushing through when you'd rather quit. Those simple choices, repeated day after day, shape your future more than any big speech or bold statement ever could. So let others talk. Let them post, announce, and seek approval. You don't need to join the noise. Your actions will speak for you. Your results will introduce you before you even say a word. And when they ask how you did it, you won't need to explain. The answer will be simple: discipline. That's the difference between potential and progress, between wishing and winning, between noise and legacy. In the end, it's not about what you say you're going to do. It's about what you actually do. Consistently, quietly, relentlessly. Because discipline always speaks louder than words. Nothing kills momentum faster than comparison. You could be making great strides, growing in your own lane, improving step by step, until you look over your shoulder. That's when it starts. You see someone doing more, achieving faster, getting more attention. Suddenly your own progress feels small. You forget how far you've come because you're too focused on how far ahead someone else appears to be. Comparison is the enemy of progress because it shifts your focus from growth to insecurity. It takes your eyes off your own goals and puts them on someone else's journey. one you don't fully understand, one that probably had its own struggles, sacrifices, and setbacks that you never saw, but in your mind, it looks perfect. And that illusion is enough to make you doubt everything. When you constantly measure your life against others, you create a game you can't win. There will always be someone ahead, someone younger, someone with more, someone who seems to have it all figured out. But their success doesn't take anything away from yours. Their timeline has nothing to do with your purpose. Yet comparison convinces you that you're behind, that you're not good enough, that you should be doing more, faster, better. Progress isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than you were yesterday. That's the only real competition, you versus you. Are you more focused than you were a week ago, more disciplined than last month, more honest with yourself than you were a year ago? That's what matters. Because long-term growth isn't built on external benchmarks. It's built on personal alignment. Everyone's path is different. Some people peak early, some peak later, some take detours, some take longer routes. And some people appear to be thriving on the outside while silently falling apart. You never know the full story. So why let a filtered version of someone else's life dictate how you feel about yours? When you stop comparing, you start noticing the right things. You start appreciating your own pace. You become more grateful for your own lessons, more present with your own process. And in that space, your progress accelerates. Because your energy is no longer being wasted on envy, self-doubt, or frustration. It's being directed into your purpose. One of the most dangerous things comparison does is create unnecessary pressure. You start setting goals not because they're meaningful to you, but because they look impressive to others. You lose sight of what you actually want. That's how people end up climbing ladders that lead nowhere, careers they hate, lifestyles they can't sustain, achievements that feel empty, all because they were chasing someone else's definition of success. Freedom comes when you let go of the need to compete. When you realize you don't need to be better than them, you need to be more true to you. That's where peace lives. That's where progress thrives. Because now you're playing your own game. You're running your own race, and every step forward is a win, regardless of who's watching. So the next time you feel tempted to compare, pause. Bring the focus back to yourself. Ask, what matters to me? What do I want to create? How can I grow today? These are the questions that lead to real success. The kind that lasts, the kind that feels right, the kind that belongs to you. Comparison steals joy, focus, and momentum, but self-awareness gives them back. Choose that. Because the moment you stop looking around and start looking within, progress begins again. There comes a point in life when you realize you don't need to explain yourself to everyone. Not every decision needs to be justified. Not every step requires permission. You don't owe the world an explanation for choosing peace, for walking away from chaos, for putting yourself first, or for outgrowing what no longer serves you. But many people spend years trapped in the cycle of over-explaining, constantly trying to prove they're good enough, smart enough, or right enough to satisfy others. It's exhausting. That kind of life keeps you small. You become so busy managing people's expectations and avoiding their judgment that you start living a version of your life that pleases them, not you. You hesitate to make bold decisions. You fear being misunderstood. You second-guess your instincts, not because you're unsure, but because you're worried about what others will think. But the truth is, no matter how carefully you explain, some people will still misunderstand you. And that's not your responsibility. Growth often looks like silence. It looks like doing the work behind the scenes, changing direction quietly, setting boundaries without loud announcements. It looks like walking your path with confidence, even when others don't get it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is move forward without saying a word. You don't need to justify your healing. You don't need to explain why you cut ties with certain people or left certain places. You don't need to provide evidence for why your dreams matter to you. If something feels right, if it brings you closer to who you want to become, that's reason enough. What many people don't realize is that constantly explaining yourself is often rooted in insecurity. It's an attempt to control how others see you, to make sure they think you're still kind, still humble, still acceptable. But that's not confidence. Confidence is trusting yourself enough to act without needing approval. It's understanding that your life is yours and your decisions are not up for public debate. People will talk anyway. They'll judge whether you stay or go, whether you speak up or stay silent. You can't win their approval all the time, and chasing it will only make you lose yourself. The only person who has to live with your choices is you. So the question isn't, will they understand? The question is, can I live with this and feel at peace? Some of the best things you'll ever do will be misunderstood at first. People won't always see your vision. They won't feel your conviction. And they don't have to. It's not your job to bring everyone along. It's your job to stay aligned with your values, your calling, and your inner truth. This doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. It means you choose to protect your energy. You learn to let your results speak. You stop arguing with people who aren't willing to see your point. You walk away from conversations that go nowhere. You let go of the need to be seen a certain way, and in doing so, you start to see yourself more clearly. Peace isn't found in being understood by everyone. It's found in understanding yourself deeply enough that other people's opinions stop controlling you. You don't owe the world an explanation. You owe yourself a life that feels honest, grounded, and free. That's where your power is. That's where your clarity lives. And stillness is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not inaction. Stillness is presence. It's the ability to be grounded in a moment without reacting, to hold your energy rather than waste it, to choose your response rather than be ruled by impulse. That is power. Because anyone can panic, anyone can react, anyone can make noise. But it takes strength to stay centered. It takes strength to observe, to listen, to wait, to know when to speak and when to remain silent. Power doesn't always show up with a loud voice or a bold gesture. Sometimes it shows up in the person who doesn't flinch in the face of pressure, who doesn't get pulled into every argument or distracted by every opinion, who can sit in discomfort without needing to run from it or numb it. That kind of stillness is not easy, but it's transformative. Stillness is where self-awareness lives. When you slow down enough to listen, not to the world, but to yourself, you start to hear things more clearly. You start to understand your patterns, your triggers, your fears, your values. You stop being led by noise and start being guided by intention. You stop reacting and start responding. And in that space, you begin to reclaim control over your thoughts, your choices, your direction. It says, I choose to protect my mind. I choose to recharge. I choose to be deliberate instead of frantic. We often associate power with dominance, with taking control, speaking louder, being more visible. But real power isn't about how many people you impress. It's about how unshakable you are when no one's watching. Stillness gives you that. It roots you. It makes you solid. So even when things around you are spinning, you don't lose yourself in the storm. Think about the people you respect most. The ones who lead with wisdom, not ego. The ones who remain composed under pressure. The ones who don't need to shout to be heard. That kind of power is born from stillness. It comes from knowing who you are and what matters and not letting anything pull you away from that. Stillness teaches patience, and patience is a kind of trust. Is the belief that you don't have, they move with purpose. So don't be afraid to be still. Don't be afraid to take a step back, to breathe, to think, to not respond right away. That space you create for yourself, that inner stillness, becomes your anchor. And in a chaotic world, being anchored is the most powerful thing you can be.